Hi, so let's get ready to make Ciao Gilda. This is probably my favorite summer dress. It's loose fitting. It can be belted around the hips or the waist. It's got this lovely gathering asymmetrical, so it's longer at the front and shorter gathering at the back. It's got two options for the collars, so you've either got the mandarin or the pointed collar, and we've got three sleeve length options, so either the short, the 3/4 or the long sleeve. This is great in any of the lightweight gauzy linens or beautiful voiles of cotton or shirting fabrics. You can do it in prints or plains. Great as a cover up for the summer, loose or belted for the evening for a lovely dressy look. So let's get started. We're going to start by placing the front bodice of the dress on the table with the wrong side facing upwards, and on top of that we're going to place the placket again with the wrong side facing upwards. We're lining the raw edges of the placket with the front opening of the bodice, and we're going to pin along the edge. Then we're going to stitch down the pinned area with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. We're going to continue stitching a centimetre beyond the bottom horizontal edge of the placket opening to ensure a secure corner. Once we've done the same for the other side, sewing along the edge, again making sure we stop 1 centimetre beyond the placket bottom opening, we're then going to carefully snip a diagonal cut into the fabric of the bottom corners of the bodice opening, making sure that we do not go beyond the line of the stitching. Always remember to start and finish your stitching with a back stitch. Going to start pressing, so all the folding and finishing is going to be performed on the right side of our bodice. So we're going to flip the placket through the opening to the right side, and we're going to press the seam allowance towards the placket. We're then going to fold the outer edge of the placket inwards to the notch and press. And then we're going to fold the placket over once more so it lands exactly over the previous stitching line, concealing all the raw edges of the placket. And we're going to press this in place. We're going to repeat this for the other side of the garment. Now we're going to secure our placket in place with pins, the area that we've just pressed. And working from the right side, we're going to sew down the outside edge, right on the very edge of our placket, down to the bottom of the placket opening. We're stopping at the same point that we sewed on the previous step. We're going to repeat this for the other side. Remember to always start and finish with a back stitch. Still working from the front side of our bodice, we are overlapping the placket so that it's nice and straight and not twisted, and we're just pinning that in place so that it doesn't move. There's excess fabric of the placket, we're pushing that through to the wrong side, and at the base of the placket we're turning inwards the raw edge by 1/2 centimetre, and we're then pinning that to hold it securely. And then we're going to stitch through all layers to secure our placket in place. The wrong side of our garment, we're going to trim away the excess fabric at the bottom of the placket, and we are overlocking this for a neat finish. We're going to work on the back of the bodice. So we have our two pieces, and right sides up, we're going to overlock the two seams of the centre back of our bodice. If you don't have an overlocking machine, you can also use a zigzag stitch. We're going to place the two back pieces right sides together, and we're going to pin along the area that we've overlocked. We will then sew with a 1 centimetre seam allowance down the centre back of our bodice. Remember to always start and finish with a back stitch. Now, to create a crisp finish on the outside of your dress, we're going to press the seams open flat. Pressing the seams open rather than to one side reduces bulk, and it's especially helpful if you plan to use a lightweight silk or linen or cotton for an elegant drape. So now we're going to attach the back yoke with the burrito method. So this is going to create a clean finished yoke, and we'll sandwich the back bodice between the two yoke pieces. So we're laying the yoke bottom layer right side facing upwards. Then the middle is we're placing the body of the bodice on top, right side facing up, and then the top layer we're placing the second yoke wrong side facing up, so its right side is facing down against the bodice. We're going to align all the notches and pin all three areas along the yoke seam, and we will sew this with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So now we're going to lay our project so that the wrong side of the back bodice is facing upwards. We're going to flip the inner yoke piece out of the way for the moment, and we're going to then pin the outer yoke to the front bodice at the shoulders, right sides together. We're pinning our two shoulder seams matching up, and we're going to sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Remember always to start and finish with a back stitch. Now we will encase the bodice to finish the shoulder seams internally. So we're going to lay our garment flat, and we're going to start from the bottom of the bodice and roll the front and back bodice fabric up tightly towards the shoulder until it looks like a tube or a burrito. We're going to take now the inner yoke, that was the piece that you'd left free, and we're going to bring it over the rolled fabric and pin it to the shoulder seams that you've just stitched. You're now pinning the inner yoke to the outer yoke at the shoulder, with the rest of the dress body safely tucked inside. Use the same line of sewing that you previously stitched for the shoulders and stitch along this piece with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, being very careful not to catch up the rolled up bodice fabric in your stitching. Once we've stitched, we're going to gently pull the bodice out through the neck opening. So your shoulders and back yoke are now perfectly finished with no visible raw edges on the inside. Now we're going to apply the interfacing, so that's the exact pattern shape that you have on your pattern pieces, and we're pressing that to the wrong side of our fabric of 1 collar rectangle and 1 collar band rectangle. Now we're going to place the 2 collar pieces right sides together, and we're going to sew around the 2 short ends and along the top edge with a 0.5 centimeter seam allowance. When sewing the short edges, slightly go beyond the edge of the interfacing to ensure a crisp, sharp point. We're then going to trim the seam allowance, so we're clipping the corners at the angle, close but not through the stitching to reduce bulk, and we're trimming along all of the edges of our collar right up to the interfacing, even on the edge that we didn't sew. We're going to turn the collar to the right side, and we're using an awl or a pointed turner to gently push out the corners. It's advisable now to press your collar flat, ensuring the seam is exactly on the edge. And then we're going to proceed by top stitching around the sides and the top edge at a distance of 0.5 centimeters from the edge. I'm going to take the collar band, the part that we've pressed the interfacing onto, and we're going to fold back the raw edge up over the interfacing by 0.5 centimeters, and we're going to sew along this line. Along the other edge that we haven't sewn, we're going to trim back the fabric up to the line of the interfacing. Now we're going to fold the finished collar in half so that the points are together, and we're going to make a small snip at the center back to mark the midpoint. Now we have to place the non-interfaced collar band right side facing up on the table. On top of that, we will place the finished collar. And then on top of that, the interfaced collar band with the wrong side facing up. We're going to align the center notches and the bottom edge of the collar, and we're going to pin through all 3 layers. So it's very important at this stage that the finished collar and the interface collar band, the 2 first pieces, are perfectly aligned. The bottom and non-interface collar band, we will be trimming that back later. So we're carefully pinning together all 3 pieces, and we're going to sew along the bottom edge and the 2 curved sides. So we're starting at the bottom edge and we're sewing with a seam allowance of 0.5 centimeters. And then we're going to sew round the two curved sides of our collar band. And then we're going to finally trim away the excess from the curved edges. Now we're going to turn our collar band to the right side, and we're going to give it a good press on both sides so it's nice and flat. And we're then going to trim the bottom edge of the collar band to leave a consistent 0.5 centimeter seam allowance. Now we're folding our collar in half, and we've got our bodice folded already in half, and we're lining up where the shoulder stitching of our bodice lies on the collar band, and we're marking that on both sides so that we have a point of reference when we start to attach our collar to the bodice. So we're with right sides together, we're pinning the collar starting at the point of the neck opening. We're making sure that the shoulders are in line with our markings on the collar, and we're pinning the collar band around the neckline. We're then going to sew with a 0.5 seam allowance, making a special attention that we're taking time around the curved edges to ensure a smooth, pucker-free finish. Now we're going to turn the dress to the wrong side, and we're going to fold the finished pre-pressed edge of our inner collar band down so that it just covers your line of stitching. So we're pinning securely in place, making sure that the center matches up with the center and the notch of the seam of the shoulder matches up. And then we're going to sew along this line directly on the edge, so we're top stitching along this area that we've just pinned. Decided to make the other collar, the Coreana, then follow these instructions. So here we have taken our collar band and we are pressing lightweight interfacing onto the wrong side of the collar band piece. We're then going to fold the bottom edge of the interfaced piece up over the interfacing, and we are pressing that in place. To pin the 2 collar band pieces right sides together, and we're pinning them securely. We're then going to stitch along the top long edge and the 2 curved side edges, following the edge of the interfacing exactly. So we're sewing along this, and then once we finish sewing, we are then going to trim back the seam allowances around the curves and around the both edges of our collar band, leaving a seam allowance of 0.5 centimeters. We're going to turn our collar band to the right side. We're opening up our stitches by pressing these flat, and then we're going to fold over the collar band so that it's nice and crisp and flat. Now we're going to fold our collar band in half, and we're going to, with our blouse folded in half neckline, we're going to mark up where the shoulder point lies on our collar band, and we're marking that on both sides. So we will then start to attach the collar band to the bodice, and we start working from the right side of the garment, and we're pinning the raw edge of the collar band to the neckline. We're starting at the back and we are matching up so that the shoulder seams match up, centre back matches up. Once we've finished pinning this area, we will then sew with a 0.5 centimetre seam allowance. Now, working from the wrong side, we're going to fold the collar band down so the pre-pressed edge neatly covers the raw seam allowance and your previous stitching line. We're pinning this securely all the way around, and then we're going to start stitching at the shoulder seam on the wrong side, and we're going to perform a continuous edge stitching all the way around the entire mandarin collar. So across the bottom, up the curve, across the top and down the other curve and back to the starting point. Now we're going to attach the sleeve. So we're going to place the bodice right side up, and then we're going to place the sleeve onto the armhole, right sides together. We're going to match the centre notch of the sleeve to the shoulder seam, and we're going to pin the curve in place. We're going to sew the sleeve to the bodice with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Repeat this process for the second sleeve. Now we're going to overlock both seams that we've just sewn of our sleeve. If you don't have an overlocking machine, a zigzag stitch would be perfect. Now for the sleeve hem, we're going to fold inwards 1 centimetre and press, and then fold again 1 centimetre to create a double fold hem. We're not going to stitch the hem just yet. First of all, we're going to fold the dress right sides together, and we're going to align the sleeve hems, the underarm points, that's where the sleeve meets the bodice, and the side seams of the dress. We're pinning this securely from the sleeve hem all the way down to the bottom of the bodice, and then we will sew with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. On the wrong side, we're going to overlock the side seams and the underarm seams. This creates a durable professional finish on the inside of your garment. Now we can finish off our sleeve. So we're returning to the pre-pressed sleeve hem, and we're following the pressed lines and stitching along the inner edge of the fold all the way around the sleeve opening. We're going to work on the skirt part of our dress. So we're going to take the 2 pieces of the skirt, and we're going to make sure that the notches are in line as indicated on the pattern. We're going to pin the seam, side seam, and we will then sew along this with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Then going to overlock the seam that we've just sewn. Now we're going to prepare the hem, so we're folding the bottom edge up by 1 centimetre and pressing, and then we're going to fold it again by another 1 centimetre and press. Now we're going to sew along the inner edge of the fold to secure the hem, and we're sewing all the way around the bottom of our skirt. Now, using a gathering foot, we're going to gather along the top edge of our skirt for the frill. If you don't have the gathering foot, you can make 2 rows of long basting stitches and then pull the threads. Once you've finished gathering the frill of the top of your skirt, we're going to then check that they match up with the circumference of the top of our bodice. So now we're going to attach the frill of the skirt to the top of the bodice. So we're doing this right sides together, and we're lining up the frill to the bottom of the bodice, making sure that the side seams are matching and the notches are matching up to ensure our asymmetrical high-low shape is positioned correctly. So the frill at the front is actually longer than the frill at the back. And once you've finished pinning this area, you're going to sew the frill to the bodice with a 1 centimetre seam allowance, taking care to keep your gathers even as you sew. Once we finish sewing the seam, we are then going to overlock the edge that we have just sewn. We're going to make our belt. So we're placing the two belt pieces right sides together, and we're going to pin the edge, and we're sewing with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So if you do have a lightweight fabric and you want a bit more structure to this belt, you could also iron on the wrong side a lightweight interfacing. We're then going to fold the belt in half so the right sides are on the inside, and we're going to pin along the edge, the long edge and the two short edges, and we're going to stitch the perimeter with the designated 1 centimeter seam allowance. We're going to leave a gap of about 5 to 8 centimeters in the middle of this long edge. This gap is then going to be used to turn the belt to the right side. We're going to use a knitting needle or a blunt tool to gently push the fabric through the opening until the right side is facing out. Use the tip of the knitting needle to carefully poke out the corners for a crisp, professional finish. We're pressing our finished belt. This has a nice long length, so it's great to wrap several times around the dress at the waistline. It's also interesting to wrap around the hips to give another look, and just remember to close off either with a hand stitch or with the machine, the hole that you used left open to pull through the belt. Congratulations. So well done if you've been watching the video right to the end and been sewing along with Maria Rosa. Ciao Gilda is now finished, ready to wear.